The Villanova Wildcats are the top cats of the Big East 2018 Tournament Champion.
Welcome back to the Roundtable for Big East Time, a show dedicated to providing high-quality Big East men's basketball content. Today we're looking forward towards the Big East Tournament and my preview and predictions for what will go down at the Garden. We'll get right into it with the first play-in game. We have 8-seed Providence versus 9-seed Butler. Now, the Friars swept this series in the regular season and come in as both the higher seed and likely favorites, but to advance, they'll need to now beat this Butler team 3 times in just a 4-game stretch. Providence does come in playing better basketball of late. They've won 3 of their last 5 and 4 of their last 8 after a 3-7 start to conference play. Nate Watson's had a great stretch run, and he can give Butler problems inside, where the Bulldogs' defense is a bit thin. Watson had 21 at Hinkle in an overtime win. Providence has also gotten great production from senior Isaiah Jackson recently, and freshman A.J. Reeves returned to his pre-injury form in the season finale win over Butler. While both these teams struggled to make shots throughout the season, Providence is starting to come around on the offensive side, whereas Butler has still struggled recently. Postseason win after a regular season sweep is always a tough one to get, but with Butler struggling and Providence peaking at the right time, I'm choosing Ed Cooley and the Friars to advance in this one. While there shouldn't be a bad game in the Big East tournament this year with the balance of the conference, the second play-in game should be one of the more interesting ones to keep an eye on, especially in the early rounds. Depaul had its best finish since the 2007 season this year and is looking for their first Big East tournament wins since the 2014 season when they beat Georgetown in this same 10-7 first-round matchup. Depaul, of course, swept St. John's this season behind their front court in the first game. The duo Femi Olujobi and Paul Reed beat up on the Johnnies. And in their second meeting, Max Strus's 43-point senior day performance was the difference. It's also worth noting that for the 3 Big East teams that are built around strong front courts, Xavier, Providence, and Depaul, went a combined 6-0 versus the undersized Johnnies in the regular season. But while St. John's has been incredibly inconsistent in this underachieving season and have struggled with these bigger teams, they still have a ton of talent and are playing on their home floor. They've been the toughest team to predict all year, but I think with their backs pressed against the NCAA tournament bubble wall, they'll show up and beat DePaul for the first time this season. I think when both these teams were at their best, St. John's was clearly the superior team. Of course, it wouldn't surprise in the slightest if Femi Olujobi and Max Strus sunk this team once again, but I'm picking the Red Storm in this one, in a pick I could easily regret later. So we'll head back up the bracket to the 4-5 matchup that pits the 2 hottest teams in the conference against each other. Creighton comes in winners of 5 in a row behind the return of freshman point guard Marcus Zegarowski. Zegarowski has quietly been one of the best guards in the Big East this season, and he seems to be moving past that broken hand in time for the postseason. He, of course, teams up with Tyshawn Alexander, who has had a great scoring sophomore season despite some recent shooting struggles. Those two play around big man Martin Krompel, who has been terrific recently as he gets further and further from that third career ACL tear. On the Xavier side, they've won 6 of 7 behind the outside-inside duo of Najee Marshall and Tyreek Jones. Unfortunately for Xavier, Najee Marshall is just a game-time decision for Thursday. Marshall was instrumental in Xavier's 3-point home win over the Jays, who played without Marcus Zegarowski earlier in the year. A healthy Creighton team routed the Musketeers in Omaha. Of course, that was before Xavier's turnaround end of the season, so it's hard to put too much stock in that game either. This game should be one of the more competitive ones in the Big East tournament, but with Creighton at full strength and Xavier potentially playing without their best player, I'll go with the Blue Jays in this one. Whichever team does win this game should get some great momentum going into the semis. While we're up here, I'll wrap up the top part of the bracket. I'm going to push Villanova through to the semis. The Cats swept both Providence and Butler in the regular season, and outside of the crazy Providence comeback against Nova in early January, none of these 4 games have been very close. Despite Villanova's 3-5 length finish, fueled by an over-reliance on Eric Pascal and especially Phil Booth, and maybe some fatigue from playing with a short bench all year, this team has a great 1-2 punch and a head coach that knows how to win in March. This shouldn't be understated considering the youth and inexperience from the rest of the league. For many of the same reasons, I'll send Villanova to the final. While Creighton or Xavier couldn't make it onto the finals, they'll need Phil Booth to struggle. When he's on, he opens up everything for this Villanova team. I'm betting on Phil Booth this March. We'll head down to the 3-6 matchup at the bottom of the bracket, where we have Seton Hall matching up with Georgetown, rematch of their double overtime game not too long ago. When James Akinjo is creating offense, Mac McClung is hitting shots, and Jesse Govan is involved in the offense, this team can really score in bunches. But maybe their best trait as a unit is their toughness, which is exemplified in their freshman class of Akinjo, McClung, and Josh LeBlanc. While they can beat a lot of teams with their toughness and grit, Seton Hall is not one of them. The Hall possess the mettle to match the Hoyas and also roster the most dangerous player in the Big East right now in Myles Powell. When the Pirates get contributions from any of the 9 guys behind Powell, they are very tough to beat. I'm going with Seton Hall in this one. While many of these games are tough to predict due to the parity in the conference, this is where it gets very difficult to decide. Marquette is 0-2 versus St. John's this season and riding a 4-game losing streak. However, St. John's has been the type of team this season to lose right as they're expected to win. Plus, it's difficult to see St. John's finishing 3-0 versus Marquette in the Big East. You also have to consider whether the Johnnies can get past Depaul, who Marquette is 2-0 against this season. But also, what can we even expect from Marquette, who's lost 4 straight, including 2 home games? While they seemingly fixed their scoring and turnover problems versus Georgetown, they still lost. With all that said, I'll bet on the Golden Eagles turning it around. I can't imagine this Marcus Howard-led squad will end their excellent season with such a whimper. I'd also assume there'd be some extra motivation from him going against the only team that has been able to contain him this season. We'll push Marquette to the semifinals. At this point, there are a lot of variables at play. Does Marquette right the ship and get back on track and beat a focused St. John's team, or do they narrowly get by an undisciplined St. John's or an inferior Depaul? Either way, their losing streak would be over at, and that's a positive step. Seton Hall should present some problems for Marquette, which showed in both regular season matchups. The Hall's defense against Marquette can mimic the Johnnies and can give Marquette problems with its quickness that can lock down the perimeter. Even if Marquette does bounce back, this Hall team can still compete with them because of their defensive style and the recent heroic play of Myles Powell. I'm going to set up a 2016 Big East final rematch and pit Nova and Seton Hall against each other for the Big East crown. At this point, it all comes down to one hypothetical game. Late in the tournament, it seems the better teams usually win, and I won't bet against a Jay Wright-led Villanova team that should be able to outlast the Hall and win the rubber game of this 3-game season series, and add a 4th Big East tournament title to their collection in 6 seasons since Big East realignment. That's going to be it from the Roundtable and Big East time. Be sure to come back for more Big East coverage during the NCAA tournament, and subscribe to stay up to date with my latest Big East videos. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you very much for watching.